So the Aramaic is now at the time of Matthew, we'll say.
Hmm.
Um, you say 400 years, it's already integrated into the tradition. That's the become the
Yep.
common language. And
Yes, it
then
has.
so you're getting Aramaic in are you getting it in Ezra and Nehemiah in those books?
Yes. Well, well, let's talk about Daniel.
Yeah, okay.
Everything, I think, from chapter 3 to the end of chapter 7 is Aramaic there.
Okay.
Third of Ezra is also in Aramaic. I believe it's the early part of Ezra. I haven't
Okay.
looked at that for a little while. Um, and the book of Esther is in Persia, which already has an Aramaic influence in the style of the Hebrew that it's revealed in. So you don't necessarily even need to put that in Aramaic because it's got a heavy Aramaic influence already
Okay.
in its Hebrew form. And we can tell based on one really easy way to tell is if the title for God is singular, it's Aramaic. If it's El or Elah, that's singular. If it's Elohim, and that's Aramaic. But if it's Elohim, then it's Hebrew.
Okay.
Okay. So if you look in Daniel, all over the place, it'll talk about the Elah of heaven, and that's because that part is in uh, is in Aramaic, including chapter 5 when he is delivered from the den of the lions and stuff like that.
Okay.
So our first covenant, our Tanakh, is a Hebrew Aramaic hybrid. Yes, almost all of it's in Hebrew. I mean, 98% of it is in Hebrew. So let's
Right.
be clear about that.
Yeah.
But for the last, say, 200 years, when the Old Testament canon was open, it was either Aramaic or Aramaic influenced. And at the same time, they're working on their oral law during this period. And you have a major rabbinic school, a Pharisaic school in Babylon. And then towards the end of the first century, you will have another one in Tiberias in the Galilee. And these are both heavily Aramaic influenced things. So when the Jews start putting their tradition into writing at the end of the second century, what we call the Mishnah, then the Mishnah, the Gemara, and a lot of these early writings are in Aramaic rather than Hebrew. And
Okay.
so Jews have been speaking Aramaic, even liberal Reform Jews, for centuries, and they haven't even realized that they've been speaking it because they think it's just Hebrew. Let me
Okay.
give you one example.
Sure.
Bar mitzvah,
Right.
right? When you turn 13, you have a bar mitzvah, right?
Yeah.
Except if it was a Hebrew term, you'd have a ben mitzvah,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. You
Bar
don't think
is the
about that.
Aramaic word for
Yeah.
son, right? And ben
Yeah.
is the Hebrew word for son. So why don't we go to a ben mitzvah? And the answer is because this was a tradition that came up in the Aramaic exile, and so it was a bar mitzvah rather than a ben mitzvah, you
Right.
know. And mitzvah is a Hebrew term. So Jews have been toggling between these two languages because when they're reading, say, in Daniel or Ezra, it's the same script. It's not
Right.
like you have this warning sign go, warning, warning, you are approaching the different language of Aramaic, which looks and sounds almost like Hebrew, but isn't Hebrew. Uh, so you just get used to sort of weird accents, weird spellings, Elah
Okay.
rather than Elohim, the insertion of an extra prepositional letter in Aramaic, and so on and so forth. You think it's all part of Hebrew when it is,
Okay.
in fact, a separate language.
Very closely related,
Very close.
sharing the same script.
Exactly.
Okay. So the early church fathers, if I remember correctly, not very many could speak Hebrew. And so the Hebrew dialect, they probably wouldn't know the difference between Aramaic or Hebrew. Is that fair, or would they?
Yes. Well, I will also say that a number of the early church fathers were bilingual.
Okay.
Okay. Uh, Irenaeus, Origen, and Eusebius were all claimed to be able to translate from Aramaic or Syriac into Greek. So
Okay.
I'm content to take them at their word on that,
Okay.
because it also is a help when they identify readings that are only from the Aramaic tradition, and they
Okay.
do so very, very early. Very helpful to my historical research.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, but to be fair, on the other hand, the dialectos Hebraidi, which is the term the church fathers used, almost everybody agrees was not Hebrew. It says Hebrew dialect, but what it really means is the Aramaic dialect spoken by the Hebrew people. Because if you think about it, this makes sense. Are you going to be talking about the dialect of Hebrew that the Hebrews speak? I mean, what would Hebrews speak if not Hebrew? So it doesn't make sense that that's Hebrew.
Right.
And that's why everybody from Catholics to Protestants, Orthodox and Reform, everyone kind of singing kumbaya on this particular thing, that the Hebrew dialect most likely is the Aramaic dialect spoken by the Jews in the first century. And
Okay.
since the alphabet looks exactly the same, at least on the Jewish side, it's very easy. You look at those letters and you go, that's Hebrew, except those words are Aramaic and not Hebrew. And this becomes evident when we look at certain phrases that Yeshua said, like Talitha Koum, for example. In Mark 5, verse 41, if that he was speaking Hebrew, which and it's translated as little girl arise, if he was speaking Hebrew, he would have said Neara Koum. Talitha is an exclusively Aramaic term,
Okay.
right? And here's the cool thing about that, Alec. Because the Greek has vowels, we know it's Talitha and not Talithoa. Why is
Okay.
that important? Because now we know Yeshua is speaking Eastern rather than Western Aramaic.
Very
Eastern
handy.
is very ah, and Western is very o.
Okay.
So the Greek is actually telling me the dialect of the Savior.
Okay. And so that's important. And does that connect with the Peshitta itself in any way? That
In just about every way.